Dear devotees, welcome back again to our continuing series on the glories of Sri Vrindavan Dham. We'll begin in the appropriate way today. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Divishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarane. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So we're going to continue. We're actually going back to the forest of Vrindavan for a few lectures now. And such discussions are the perfect way to begin the day and to finish the day. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he liked to quote the following verse from the Narada Bhakti Sutras. Tadinam durinam manye Mekacha mam na durinam Yadinam Krishna samlapa kata puyasha varjitam. Quote, a cloudy day is not inauspicious, but a day devoid of discussing Krishna Katha is inauspicious. It's a good one. A cloudy day is not inauspicious, but a day devoid of discussing Krishna Katha is inauspicious. So for today, I've chosen to speak about the magic forest of Kokilavan. And once again, Srila Narayan Bhatta Goswami will be assisting us by giving us several mantras from his Braj Bhakti Vilas, which will help us to appreciate the beauty and the importance of Kokilavan. And we'll begin with the Prana Mantra for this forest that we find in Braj Bhakti Vilas 966. Devarshikina Rakirna Kokila nir Mitayacha Vanaya Labapurnaya Namaste Su Svara Prada. And I quote, O forest surrounded by gods, sages, and kinaras, O forest created by the presence of cuckoos, O forest having the delightful sounds of the cuckoo, obeisances to you who are full of joy. I think that's one of my favorite prana mantras that he's given us all year long. And after this, Narayan Bhatta Goswami writes, and I quote, recite this mantra 6 times while paying obeisances. One who does so gets a voice as sweet as a kokila. A kokila is a cuckoo. Then Narayan Bhatta Goswami reveals the presiding deity of Kokilavan. As we've many times mentioned, each holy place in Vrindavan has a presiding deity. So this he mentions in Braj Bhakti Vilas 166. Natavara Kokilavana Dipodevaha. Lord Natavara is the presiding deity of Kokilavan. And then a mantra for the presiding deity of Kokilavan. And this is Braj Bhakti Vilas 178 with some bij mantras. Om Klim Kokilavana Dipa Taye Nata Varaya Shvadha. He says, Om Klim, I surrender to Natavara, the presiding deity of Kokilavan. And finally, Braj Bhakti Vilas 967, technical verse. Bhadrashuk Larshi Pascham Yam Svati Nak Shastra Samyute Jagama Kukila Yasacha Vanam Kalamano Haram. Quote, the Adi Varaha Purana says, when the Rishi Paschami day of the month of Bhadrapada is aligned with the constellation named Svati, one should go to the forest of the Kokila, the cuckoo. This forest is extremely delightful to behold. So a nice introduction to this amazing magical wonderland of Kokilavan. So now, this forest of Kokilavan is described as a favorite place for a particular species of cuckoo bird. A cuckoo bird is a black bird with brown wings, And in Vrindavan, it's commonly found in mango trees. And these particular cuckoo birds, they have a unique call, like cuckoo. That's how it reads, cuckoo, which rises in pitch with each consecutive call. Cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo. I'm not a cuckoo bird. So now, just a very short distance from Kokilavan, like less than a mile, is the sacred town of Yavat, where Vrindavaneshwari Srimati Radharani, she lived after getting married to Abhimanyu. And she lives there in a palace with her in-laws, Jatila, who is her husband's, Abhimanyu's mother, and Kutila, who was Abhimanyu's sister. And Radharani actually considers her home in Yavat to be like a prison, because these in-laws, that's all part of Braj Leela, it's all organized by Purnamasi. These in-laws are always suspicious that she may try to meet Krishna at any moment. And it's a fact. Radharani is always trying to get out of Yavat to meet Krishna, and Krishna is always trying to get into Yavat to meet Radharani. There's so many pastimes actually connected to that place, to Yavat. When we go in Parikrama, we always go there with a big group, and then the speakers describe various pastimes. We won't mention that now. I think some of them we've already discussed in previous lectures. So anyway, one day, Krishna, who had said he resembles a black cuckoo, and who can perfectly imitate its call or its singing, he went to the Kokilavan forest to enlist the help of the cuckoo birds there. Why so? To free Radharani from her prison in Yavat. And what he did was, he called all the cuckoo birds by playing musical notes that sounded like the cuckoo's call in the forest. And the acharyas say that soon all the cuckoo birds in Kokilavan joined him in a chorus. All the birds were lined up in the trees, and there was a chorus that echoed throughout Braja. And I also read that while Krishna was playing his flute, he was dancing very nicely, which really excited the birds. Remember, the birds are all self-realized souls. They're all Brajabasis. This is their rasa with Krishna. So when Krishna was dancing while playing the flute, the birds were exceedingly happy. So then, soon the sound of the birds singing, combined with Krishna's flute playing, brought all the residents of Yavat to the rooftops to see what was going on. You see, when you come to Vrindavan and you visit these cowherd villages, most often the house, there's a flat roof on top because, well, they dry their clothes up there, and they have social gatherings up there on the flat roofs, and they spend evenings up there like that. So when the sound of the birds, the chorus of the birds singing, combined with Krishna's flute playing, spread throughout Vrindavan, all the residents of Yavat, they went to the rooftops to see what was going on. And that included Jatila, Abhimanyu's mother. She came out to see. And at that time, Vishaka was visiting Radharani on that day. So Jatila said to Vishaka, "Vishaka, I've never heard cuckoos sing so loudly or so beautifully before." And Vishaka said, "Yes, for some reason the birds must be rejoicing." And Jatila nodded and she said, "Yes, it is all exceptionally beautiful, isn't it?" So Vishaka's, very clever, and she suspected that Krishna was somehow behind this cuckoo's festival it's described in scripture, the cuckoo festival. So she said to Jatila, "Mother, do you think myself and Radharani, we could leave the palace and go see what has excited the birds so much, and we'll bring you back a report?" So Jatila replied, "Yes, go ahead, dear, and enjoy seeing the cuckoos singing from close up. but come right back. And she's always suspicious that Krishna's going to meet Radharani somewhere. So when Vishaka told Radharani of this plan, Radharani also immediately assumed that Krishna was behind this chorus of cuckoos in Kokilavan. So she quickly dressed in her finest garments and ornaments, and with Vishaka and her closest friends, because many of her gopi friends are often with her in Yavat, in her room with her, they all hurried to Kokilavan, just, not so far away, 1 mile away. Now the Shastras say that Radharani had said nothing about the meeting to her girlfriends. Just Vishaka and Radha knew what was going on, but all the other girls, they didn't actually say what was happening. However, the scripture says that her girlfriends heard the loud beating of Radharani's heart, and this indicated to them that Krishna was on her mind. As they're going to Kokilavan, her heart's beating in ecstatic love. So her friends, they knew that Krishna was on her minds. So now everyone's kind of informed. So when the gopis arrived at nearby Kokilavan, they were overwhelmed with the sound of the cuckoos singing. In fact, the singing was so intense, these birds were singing so intense that it completely drowned out all other sounds of the forest. And on top of that, the forest was so thick and so dense that at first the gopis became a bit confused even where the sound was coming from. But at last, it's described, they reoriented themselves. And they finally moved in a little bit closer, and they came to a tree that was entirely covered with blissful singing cuckoos. And beneath the tree, lo and behold, stood Krishna with his hands cupped to his mouth like this, as he directed the choir of birds in their singing. He would play his flute, and then then he'd encourage them to sing, and he'd play his flute, and then they would sing like this. So Krishna was the maestro of this choir of birds in the Kokilavan forest. So seeing that the gopis had arrived, Krishna lowered his hands and he stopped singing. And the cuckoos realized, Shastra says, their purpose had been fulfilled. And they also stopped singing. So then all the cuckoo birds, they looked around, curious to see what would happen next. And meanwhile, back in Yavat, the abrupt end to the cuckoo singing had startled Jatila. And she thought, what a shame. The girls must have frightened the birds and made them stop singing. But no, the cuckoos had not been frightened, but rather they were in bliss, it's described. Quote, as they crowded around the branches of the tree they were in, privileged to watch Radharani's loving pastimes with Kokila Krishna in the sing-song forest of Kokilavan. I thought that's so sweet. Krishna's called Kokila Krishna. And what was the event? The sing-song in the forest of Kokilavan. So, Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati, he writes in his famous Vrindavan Mahimamrita in chapter 2. There's some nice verses which relate to the birds of Vrindavan. So I thought I'd conclude that particular pastime with his perfect description of some of the birds in Braj. He writes, the groves of attractive trees and creepers, laden with flowers and fruits of variegated colors, the attractive, intoxicating, blissful calls of many peacocks, cuckoos, and parrots, the many attractive lakes, rivers, mountains, and attractive bowers, and the attractive land made of gold and jewels, have all attracted me to Sri Vrindavan Dham. May my mind reflect upon Vrindavan, its clean earth made of most colorful chintamani, its creepers and trees full of fruits and flowers, glowing with knowledge and bliss, its flocks of birds chanting the Samveda, and its rivers and lakes of spiritual rasa. Who would not serve the highest goal, Vrindavan, where Radha and Krishna, flattering each other in many ways, pluck flowers from creepers and trees with great joy, while bathing in its lakes and playing with the birds. All the birds of Vrindavan ki. The birds of Kokilavan ki, the cuckoo birds. So, all the forests in Vrindavan are special, but Kokilavan is considered extra special because it's where Radha and Krishna can spend some precious time alone in their loving pastimes. Scriptures describe that one time Radha and Krishna, desiring some privacy, quote, from the passionate loving service of their attendants. You can imagine, everyone wants to serve Krishna. So desiring some privacy from the passionate loving service of their attendants, Radha and Krishna hid from Radharani's girlfriends in a large forest of banyan trees. They just slipped away to a large forest of banyan trees. And after spending some time there, they strolled through the forests of Bhadravan, Kandiravan, and Bilvavan, and finally they came to one of their favorite places in the forest of Kokilavan. Now, naturally, we can understand Radharani's gopis. They were desperately trying to find her because, well, they can't survive even a moment without her association. It seems like a millennium to them, one moment. So they managed to follow her because of her distinctive footprints in the Kokilavan forest. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his Shri Rupa Chintamani, one book he's written, he gives us a very beautiful description of the markings on Srimati Radharani's feet, which enabled her girlfriends to find her. So I thought it would be proper at this point to read one of the verses from Sri Rupa Chintamani describing her beautiful lotus feet, with all humility at my command. He writes, quote, I worship Sri Radha, whose lotus feet are endowed with 19 great auspicious markings. On the left foot are an umbrella, a disc, a flag, a vine, a flower, a bracelet, a lotus flower, an upward line, an elephant goad, a half moon, and a barleycorn. And on her right foot are the sakti, which is, I researched, and it's a weapon. A sakti is a weapon. A club, a chariot, a sacrificial altar, earrings, a fish, a mountain, and a conch shell. And in his prayer, Dani Dani Radhika Ke Charan, which translates as the lotus feet of Sri Radhika are my only shelter, which is found in his book Radharasa Sudhanidhi, Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati. He prays very nicely, referring to Radharani's lotus feet. He writes, O Vrindavaneshwari, O Sri Radhe, I pray for the shelter of your lotus feet. Your lotus feet are the treasure house of divine love. Shamasundar keeps them safely and dearly in his heart. These feet are the supreme cooling remedy for the blazing fire of material existence. Wow. And he has another verse as well. I'll recite that verse too. It's all pure nectar. He writes, O Radha, you are the goal of my life and my only shelter. The countless milkmaids of Vrindavan swarm around your lotus feet and worship them with all their heart and soul. Your lotus feet are an inexhaustible fountainhead of the perfection of divine love and are inconceivable even to the greatest of saints. That is the reason why great devotees strive with courage and hope to catch the sweetness and the beauty of the grace that flows from your lotus feet. O Queen, when will you be pleased to show me the particular manner in which I should serve your divine lotus feet? So, anyway, the gopis, they followed Radharani's, the markings there on her feet through the dust, the Brajrenu, Chintamani dust of Vrindavan, down through the different forests and to Kokilavan. And they were approaching Radha and Krsna, who were enjoying, a few moments of privacy. And as the gopis were approaching, Krishna heard their voices. And he whispered to Radha, he said, "O Radha, if your friends find us, our time together today will end. Quickly come with me. The forest of Kokilavan becomes denser the further we go in. And the girls won't find us there." But Shastra says that Radharani, quote, feeling somewhat proud of her unique beauty, youth, and intelligence, and good character that are especially appealing to Krishna, she complained about the prospect of having to walk any further. Feeling somewhat proud of these wonderful qualities that appeal to Krishna, she just complained. She said, I don't want to walk, I want to stay here. Now, here we can note that Radharani is exhibiting pride, but we should be very careful not to confuse her pride to be anything like the pride we see in conditioned souls. Because everything Radharani does is for Krishna. And by exhibiting pride, we see that Krishna leaves her. I'm jumping ahead here a little bit. He'll be leaving her, as he does in that the one famous rasa dance. But what is the overall effect of his leaving her because of her pride? Well, their loving feelings for each other in separation increase. The highest sentiment of love for Krishna is vipralamba bhava, intensely feeling Krishna's separation. Your love increases. Separation makes the heart grow fonder. And what was the reason for the separation? Pride. So pride's favorable in Braj Lila in that sense. You could say it's a selfless pride because it facilitates Krishna's happiness in the sense that he misses her more and more. So that's how we should understand her pride. Not like the pride of someone in this world. And this is, the Acharyas say, this is true with any and all spiritual qualities that we generally understand in negative ways in material life. For example, lust or greed or deceit. These are terrible qualities. Lust, anger, and greed that Bhagavad Gita describes, they're the pathway to hell. But when engaged in Krishna consciousness, they have a different effect, just like pride does. These qualities themselves may enhance the selfless love of the Brajabasis for Krishna and Krishna for the Brajabasis. Let's take another example, greed. We know that greed plays a major role in material life. They say, take according to your need, not according to your greed. But greed also plays a major role in spiritual life. Well, how's that? Well, there's a beautiful verse in Madhya Lila, Chaitanya Charitamrita, other places as well. Very important verse, referring to lolium. Lolium is spiritual greed. Krishna bhakti rasa bhavati mati karyatam yadi kutopi labhyate trattoloyam apimulyam ekalam janma kotisu kritar na labhyate. Quote, pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness cannot be had even by pious activity in hundreds and thousands of lives. It can be attained only by paying one price. And what is that? Intense lolium, intense greed to obtain it. If it is available somewhere, one must purchase it without delay. So as a materialistic person is greedy for material pleasure, a devotee is greedy, he's lolium, he's greedy for Krishna's mercy. We find that verse also in Rupa Goswami's Padyavali. Very important verse. So when all such qualities that we've mentioned are exhibited in the spiritual world, our acharyas actually worship those qualities. They worship those qualities: deceit, greed, pride. How do we know? Well, here is a verse that up until now has not yet been translated into English. It's a first-time translation on a request I made to my good friend Hari Parshad Das, a devotee scholar from the GBC Advisory Committee. He lives in Mumbai. So I asked him, can you give me some guidance on this? Is there a shastric verse which we can use to show that these apparently inauspicious qualities can even be dovetailed in Krishna consciousness? So he gave a wonderful verse. It's by Jiva Goswami. It's actually the introductory verse on his commentary on Dan Keli Kumudi. Dan Keli Kumudi is a wonderful book written by Rupa Goswami. So Jiva Goswami has a commentary on that, and his introductory verse is so interesting. First time. Of course, if you're a Sanskrit scholar, you may have read it many times, but here we go. He writes, Dan Keli Kalo Lupta Dharma Marya Dayor Bhaje Radha Madhava Yokama Lobadamba Madanritam. Quote, I worship the qualities of lust, greed, pride, intoxication, and deceit exhibited by the morality-defying couple, Radha and Madhava, during the pastime of Dan Keli. Dan Keli, of course, is the taxing pastime. Now we know why. We've discussed this for a few minutes now, so now we understand how such a verse can come about. I worship the qualities of lust, greed, pride, intoxication, and deceit exhibited by the morality-defying couple, Radha and Madhava, during the pastime of Dan Keli. Why? Again, in summary, because those particular qualities simply facilitate the amorous loving pastimes of Radha and Krishna. Selfless love. And the acharyas, I was reading more, the acharyas say that all these qualities are necessary for the divine couple to completely enjoy their loving dealings, to make it complete. Because emotions, their spiritual emotions facilitate loving pastimes. So in their own way, each of these qualities facilitates the love between Radha and Krishna. And the acharyas say that various rasas have various requirements. A lover in Madhurya rasa cannot exhibit the humility that we find in a servant in Dasya rasa. A lover in Madhurya rasa is expected to have a full spectrum of emotions in their character in order to completely satisfy Krishna, like pride. I think we've covered it. It's a little technical and quite deep, but it just makes so much sense, doesn't it, in the transcendental platform? It makes Krishna consciousness perfect and complete. Radha and Krishna's loving pastimes. And we must know these things, and we must eventually realize things in order to be good servants of Krishna, to completely satisfy him. So this is Braj. We can go very deep. So in this way, we can better appreciate that statement we read earlier, that feeling somewhat proud of her unique beauty, youth, intelligence, and good character, and how they were especially appealing to Krishna, Radharani complained about the prospect of having to walk a little further into the Kokilavan forest. So Radharani, she said to Krishna, Krishna, you herd your father's cows every day, and you are accustomed to wandering from forest to forest. What's more, you're a young boy and you're very strong, but I'm a delicate girl. I don't have the energy to keep walking. Let's just stay here. So Krishna took Radharani's hand and he pleaded, it's not that far away, Radha. Don't worry. We won't walk too fast. If you can't walk, then climb on my shoulders. But Radharani just kind of looked away like that. And with that, Krishna suddenly disappeared, as we mentioned earlier, leaving Radharani all alone. And then Radharani immediately realized that her pride, so-called pride, had driven Krishna away. So in great distress, vipralamba bhav, she fell to the ground and cried pitifully. And the sound of her weeping immediately brought all her girlfriends there. They were coming closer, of course. So then now she's crying. And they came to where she was laying down. And then seeing her plunged into an ocean of despair, all of her friends plunged into an ocean of despair. And it's described that the whole of Kokilavan forest then became filled with the sounds of their weeping, Radharani and her friends. And gradually some of the gopis calmed themselves, and then they showered Radharani with a spray to revive her of sandalwood, aguru, and musk. And other gopis, they followed suit. They were fanning her with chamaras, and some of them were comforting her with sweet words, like this, churning the nectar of the ocean of devotion. This was real love, divine love, selfless love. And finally, Radharani regained her composure, and she gave her friends, like it's described, a heartbreaking account of how Krishna had deserted her. So then the gopis, they wanted to rectify the situation. They wanted to bring Radha and Krishna together. This is really what these Braja gopis want more than anything. Especially Radharani's girlfriends. They want her to be the most happy. So she's most happy when she's with Krishna. Actually, one name of Radharani is Anapayani. She's never separated from Krishna. Even if physically she's separated, in her heart she's never separated. That's the nature of love. So the gopis, they're always making these plans, how to bring Radha and Krishna together. So now Krishna's disappeared, and all the girls get together, and they have, like, for want of a better word, an ishtagoshti in Kokilavan. And they're thinking, how do we bring Krishna back? How do we bring Krishna back? How do we bring Krishna back? So the conclusion, what they came up with, is simply wonderful and very instructive. What did they do to bring Krishna back? They sat together and they sang his glories. They had kirtan, a fundamental principle of Krishna consciousness in which we're always engaged. What are we doing when we do japa? What do we do when we have a kirtan in the temple? What are we doing on Sankirtan? We're calling out to Krishna. I've said it many times, but in one lecture I heard Prabhupada, one devotee asked Prabhupada, what does it mean, this, can you give an explanation? What does it mean, the Hare Krishna mantra? We've heard from Prabhupada many times the general explanation, my dear Lord, my dear energy of the Lord, please engage me in your service. But this time Prabhupada just closed his eyes. He said, what does it mean, this Hare Krishna mantra? He said, it means my friend, my friend, my friend. So if we think like that, even as aspiring devotees, as Krishna's our ever well-wishing friend, then we can really chant from the heart. So kirtan has the potency to attract the Lord, to get his attention. I was reading the other day in our BBT publication, Teachings of Lord Kapila. I like to read the small books too, because so many instructions. So in the Teachings of Lord Kapila, page 32, Srila Prabhupada is quoted. And in this quote, we hear the principle of how chanting Krishna's name attracts Krishna. Prabhupada describes it in a very interesting way. So the quote is, from Teachings of Lord Kapila, page 32, Prabhupada says, in the beginning of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, we first address the internal energy of Krishna, Hare. Thus we say, O Radharani, O Hare, O energy of the Lord. When we address someone in this way, they usually say, yes, what do you want? And the answer is, please engage me in your service. This should be our prayer. So it's so sweet what Prabhupada said. In this way, when we address someone in this way, they usually answer, yes, what do you want? And our answer, when we hear from Radha or Krishna, or even Prabhupada, please engage me in your service. This should be our prayer. So when we chant like that, Krishna reciprocates. Why? Because he loves his devotees, even the newest devotees. Just like a mother, or a wife, when her husband calls, she comes. They have a mature relationship. But when her little baby, who can't even speak properly, can't express his or herself properly, when they cry in the crib, mother also comes running. So Krishna also comes running for his young devotees. We should have that faith. And that's very nicely described by Sri Jagannath Sena. Rupa Goswami in his Padyavali. Padyavali is a compilation of Rupa Goswami's favorite verses. I just love that book. I've read it 1,000 times. And there's quotes from different personalities who Rupa Goswami so much appreciated. And he uses their quotes in his Padyavali. So here's a beautiful verse by Sri Jagannath Sen, which shows that Krishna loves even the new bhakta who walks in the door for the first time. Dinabandhu riti namate shmaram yadavendra patitoham utsahe bhakta vatsala tayat vayi shrute mamakam hridayam ashu kampate. I just love it. O Yadavendra, I am fallen. When I remember your name, Dinabandhu, the friend of the fallen, I become encouraged. And when I hear that you love your devotees, my heart trembles. O Yadavendra, I am fallen. But when I remember your name, Dinabandhu, friend of the fallen, I become encouraged. And when I hear that you love your devotees, my heart trembles. So, sometimes devotees go through a phase or become a little bit discouraged, disappointed. Maybe they may have lost a little faith due to the powerful influence of the material energy. But just remember this verse, how Krishna loves all his devotees. So, yes. So the gopis, they decided to have kirtan. We know they have their Gopi Gita in the 10th canto of Bhagavatam. They sing their hearts out of love for Krishna. So in this particular case, they started singing. It says they sang, and they sang, and they sang, and they sang, well into the night. And finally, after some time, you know what happened? Suddenly they saw two large lotus eyes glowing like lanterns in the darkness in the forest. They're in Kokilavan, it's nighttime. Suddenly they saw two large lotus eyes. They'd been chanting all day and half the night. Two large lotus eyes glowing like lanterns in the darkness. And then suddenly Krishna appeared directly before them in his all-attractive bluish-black form. And seeing Krishna smile, Shastra says, the gopis' pain dissolved. So here's a remedy. Of course, that's a remedy for Vipralambha Bhav, but we can take it that it's a panacea for all problems that we encounter, because all problems come ultimately, you could say originally, from forgetfulness of Krishna. If you want to trace it back to the origin, what's the source of our suffering? Well, there may be so many immediate causes, but there's a remote cause, and that's that we turned our back on Krishna. When you're facing the sun, everything's, effulgent. When you turn your back on the sun, you just see the shadow of your own existence. So the remedy for solving all problems is to turn back to Krishna and to call his name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And through time, as that chanting purifies us of sinful reactions piled up in our heart and those nasty material desires which are the obstacles between us and Krishna, and that little seed of that bhakti-lat beach, that we water it by that chanting, it begins to grow. Then we won't feel the pain of material existence, because we'll be connected to Krishna, who's the reservoir of all pleasure. And even in this world of birth and death, even in the midst of the greatest calamity, we'll remain equipoised, and what's more, we'll be happy. It's possible. Of course, for Krishna's service, we may take on some anxieties and some disturbances and whatever, but that's another thing. That's also transcendental. So then, when the gopis' pain was dissolved, Krishna turned his attention to Sri Radha, and he graciously requested her to dance with him. They were reunited, and what did they do? They danced together. And as they did, it's described that Radharani's servants, her friends and helpers, all fell into an ocean of transcendental bliss, seeing their most worshipable personalities, Radha and Krishna dancing together. They were happy for Radha. So Kokilavan's a very special place. Now, back in Yavat, because Yavat and Kokilavan, they're very close again. It's almost like one area. So, and the pastimes are so interrelated. Back in Yavat, later on, in the southwestern corner of Yavat is a small but thickly wooded area. I've been there. Even today, it's very thickly wooded. It's called Vatsukora. Now, when you go to Yavat, because Yavat's a very popular place for devotees to go on their parikramā. From Yavat, you walk about a few kilometers or a couple miles to Terkadamba. That's a whole other wonderful Leelastan, very much loved by Rupa Goswami. So when we go on parikramā, we go to Yavat, we tell all the stories there, and then we walk that beautiful through the fields to Terkadamba. So in the southwestern corner of the town of it's actually a village of Yavat, there's a thickly wooded area. It's called Vatsukora. It's good for hiding, if you want to hide from Jatila or Kutila. So one time, Radha and Krishna had made a plan to meet in Vatsukora. And actually that day turned out to be the day that Krishna was given permission to take out the cows. That's called Gopastami, on the day of Gopastami. So, that was a big day. Krishna's, he gets to take charge of the cows to go out in the forest, but in his mind, he's thinking, yes, it's also a chance I can sneak away and see Srimati Radharani on the pretext of maybe a calf or cow going astray. So, through their messengers, the different parrots of Vrindavan, Radha and Krishna had made this plan to meet at Vatsukora. So, but Krishna was there, but Radharani wasn't showing up. Because, as often happens, Jatila forbade Radharani to go outside that day, thinking maybe she had a plan to meet Krishna. And this caused Srimati Radharani to plunge again into an ocean of despair. The Acharyas put it very nicely. They write, thoroughly convinced that life had no meaning without Krishna, Radhika sat in her room, soaking the floor with her tears. Even her most light-hearted friends were surrounded by clouds of despair. Even her most light-hearted friends were surrounded by clouds of despair. I thought that was beautiful. So Krishna was hiding in this dense forested area of Vatsukora, anticipating her appearance at any moment. But when the news, because news travels quickly to facilitate these pastimes, when the news that she was now confined to her in-laws' house reached him, Krishna became plunged into an ocean of despair, or Vipralambha Bhav. So unable to face the day without Radharani, Krishna turned to Shubal. Shubal's one of the closer cowherd boys to Krishna. There's a group of cowherd boys who actually also facilitate Radha and Krishna's pastimes. Not just gopis, but these are very these particular cowboys are cowherdsmen. They're very special, these cowboys. So Subal is one of them. So Krishna turned to Subal with tears in his eyes, and he said, "O friend, I place my life in your hands. Somehow or other, bring my beloved Sri Radha here." So Subal said, "Krishna, how can I bring her here in broad daylight? Let's wait until nightfall, then I'll be able to fulfill your desire." Krishna said, "Nope, Subal. How can I wait? Every moment is like passing of a millennium without my beloved Radha. You must somehow bring her to me now." So without hesitating for a moment, Subal, he left that thickly wooded area of Vatsukora, and he walked straight up to the little hill, their little rise, to the front gate of Abhimanyu's palace, and he walked straight to the front door. Now I was wondering, how can an obvious, very dear cowherd boy, friend of Krishna, do that? Because Jatila's going to get suspicious. But then I read that the acharyas say that Subal's family is intimately connected with Abhimanyu's family. I didn't say how, but that's sufficient. Subal's family is intimately connected with Abhimanyu's family. So Subal was able to enter without difficulty. And what did he do? Didn't have actually a plan, but he was just going to meet Radharani and her friends, so he proceeded straight to Radharani's quarters without being seen. And when Sri Radha and her friends heard his knock on the door and they opened it, they immediately let him in, because they knew that Subal was not only one of Krishna's most intimate friends, they knew he was also a surrendered servant of Srimati Radharani. So we're learning so many wonderful details here. Subal is also a surrendered servant of Srimati Radharani. So they welcomed him into their midst, and then they explained the entire situation, why Radha wasn't coming, because Jatila was keeping her back, because she's suspicious Krishna might be in the area, and actually the rumor was that Krishna was herding his cows. That's the rumor in the area. Rumors. So then Lalita spoke up, Lalita Saki. She said, Radha is so anxious to meet Krishna that we fear for her health. Indeed, we fear for her life. So Subal said, well, my friend Krishna suffers from the same disease, and he may also meet the same end. So then Vishaka Saki, she spoke up. She said, well, then we have to arrange for Radharani to escape from this dungeon. And just as she said that, it's described that outside, a calf who was looking for its mother passed by the window of that part of the palace. And Subal, he got an idea. He said, bring that calf here. And all the gopis, they looked incredulously at each other like, what? Bring the calf into the palace? But Lalita, she said to some of them, go and get the calf. So a few minutes later, the girls returned, dragging and pushing, how these little calves are sometimes, dragging and pushing this reluctant calf into Radharani's room. And then Subal, who, by the way, actually looks very much like Radharani. We'll discuss that a little bit later. He looks very much like Radharani. He said, I have a plan. And all the girls like, really? Like, what's your plan? And what does this calf have to do? So he said, I will trade clothes with Radha. Then she, looking like me, can carry the calf, which has run astray, out the former gate and go to the meeting with Krishna, because it'll just look like I'm leaving. So again, Subal and Radharani's features are very similar. Subal is 12 and a half years old, and his luster, his complexion, and even his facial features are similar actually in every way to Radha's. It's got like a male version of Radharani. He's a boy, but his features are very, very similar to hers. And I was reading that what's more, his blue clothing, his assorted necklaces, and his jeweled earrings are just like hers. So hearing Subal's plan, the gopis laughed and they clapped at his quick thinking. So Radha entered deeper into her chambers, and Subal went to another room, and the gopis, they helped them exchange clothes. So soon Radha and Subal emerged from their changing rooms, and they, each looking like the other. Then lifting the calf in her arms, Radha, disguised as Subal, walked out the door, down the hall, and into the courtyard to go to meet Krishna. When she met Jatila and Kutila, and they were very surprised to see him, Subal, on his way out carrying a calf. So Radha, in Subal's voice, she said, "This calf strayed from the herd and ran into your house. I must hurry so that the herd of Nanda's son can move on," meaning the herd of Nanda's son, Krishna, can move on. So at the mention of Krishna's name, Jatila said, "We'll quickly take your calf to its mother and let the herd continue to the pastures. The further a certain bluish cowherd boy is from this house, the more secure the integrity of my family will be. Now go." The further a certain bluish cowherd is from this house, the more secure the integrity of my family will be. Now go. So Radha, dressed as Subal, lowered her head to hide her smile, it's described, and she answered, "As you order, mother, as you order." What better order could she get to go see Krishna? "As you order, mother, as you order." And she walked out the gate and on to Vatsukora. Now, it even gets better. When she arrived at Vatsukora, this densely forested area, even Krishna was fooled by the disguise. And he thought, Subal's back, but where's Radharani? Subal failed in his mission. So he said, "Where is Radhika? Why didn't you bring her here, Subal?" And then Srimati Radharani, she wanted to test Krishna's love for her. So sounding like Subal's voice, she said in the disguise, "Friend, I tried my best, but it was not possible to bring Radha here in broad daylight. It was impossible." Then Krishna pleaded, "Then of what use is my life?" He said, "If I cannot see Radha, if I cannot hear her voice or enjoy her company, what will I do with my eyes or my ears, indeed, with my entire being?" So Radha smiled and said, "Well, Krishna, Radha may not be available, but if you give the order, I, Subal, will go bring Chandravali to you in no time." Now, many of you know Chandravali is Srimati Radharani's chief competitor. She's also a gopi. She's also very dear to Krishna, but she's Radha's competitor. So when Radha, in the voice of Subal, said that, he would go get Chandravali, Krishna, this was a test. Radharani was testing Krishna. Krishna shook his head. He said, "No. You want to replace heavenly nectar with well water? I'm not interested." That was the right answer. No, you want to replace heavenly nectar, my Radha, with well water? I am not interested. So Krishna's words of desperation and loyalty to Vrindavaneshwari, it made Radharani feel a little guilty. So she just dropped the struggling calf and threw her arms around Krishna's neck. Now Krishna was still deceived by the disguise, so he was astonished that by Subal's, quote, behavior. For a moment he couldn't understand why his friend was acting in the way he was, nor why his friend's embrace was causing him a special bliss that he only felt when he was embraced by Radharani. The two things. He couldn't understand why his friend was acting like that, embracing him, like a gopi would embrace him, nor, the Shastra says, why Subal's embrace is causing me to feel the ecstasy I feel with the gopis. Then as Krishna looked into his friend's eyes, he heard a girl's voice say, this is Radharani speaking, O moon of Vrindavan, can't you recognize your maidservant even as she holds you in her arms? O moon of Vrindavan, can't you recognize your maidservant even as she holds you in her arms? So, surprised Krishna. Krishna was very surprised. He relished the sight of Radha dressed as a gopa. He thought that Subal's familiar turban, a dhoti, wrapper, bandi, this is a mangala bandi, rope, and stick took on a special attraction when ornamenting Radha's exquisite form. And gazing more intently into Srimati Radharani's beautiful face, free of makeup, eyeliner, nose ring, and musk dot, it stated her natural beauty drew him further into the depths of his attachment to her. So some hours later, Subal, still in the disguise of Srimati Radharani, left for Vatsukora on the pretext of getting some fresh air. Jatila finally said to Srimati Radharani that, you can go. You can go now. So, Subal, dressed as Radharani, left the palace, accompanied by Vishaka and Rati Manjari and different gopis. Jatila was fooled. She didn't see that it was Subal. She thought it was Radharani. So then, he went to that meeting place, and then Subal and Radharani, they exchanged their clothes, their natural attire, and Radharani reluctantly returned home, and Krishna also reluctantly rejoined his friends and drove the cows back to Nandagram. It's described eager for nightfall. So after all this is going on, Krishna's eager for nightfall. And why is he eager for nightfall? Because it's described during the nightfall, he would again meet his most beloved Srimati Radharani in a grove by the Yamuna shore. Hare Krishna. That's the Gopastami pastime, with probably some details that some of you had never heard before. Wow. So once again, these blissful pastimes have brought us much needed relief from the pangs of material existence. And what's more, hopefully they've increased our desire to accept Prabhupada's invitation to visit and to live eternally in Sri Vrindavan Dham. That's where, again, I've said it so many times, that's where we want to end up. So I will finish today with the verse like we often do. Hearing how we want to live in Sri Vrindavan Dham in Srila Prabhupada's blissful association forever and ever and evermore. Tvam Gopika Brishavarash Tanyitika se Sevadika Karini Guru Nija Pada Padme Dasyam Pradaya Kurumam Braja Ganeshri Radangri Sevana Rasa Sukhinam Sukado. O beloved spiritual master, you are always in the presence of the cowherd girl Radha, the daughter of King Vrishabhanu. Please award me service at your lotus-like feet, which are the proprietors of devotional service. Please place me in the ocean of joy by bestowing upon me happiness in the mellows of service at the feet of Sri Radha in the groves of Brajadam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, Sri Vrindavan Dhama ki, Kokilavan ki, Kokilavan, chorus, cuckoo birds ki. Back home, back to Godhead ki. Thank you again. We'll look forward to seeing you in a few days. Hare Krishna. Shri Shri Gauranitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radhashama Sundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Kokilavana ki, Kokilavan Cuckoos ki, Gopimanandi, Jai Jai Sisi Radhe Sham. Hare Krishna Prabhu.